Hi, I'm Michelle Atkinson. I'm an environmental horticulture agent here in Manatee County, and I am going to present to you today the Florida Water Star program, which is a statewide program. This particular presentation was put together by the St. John's Water Management District. Deidre Irwin is their representative, so you'll see some references to St. John's. Florida has some wonderful water resources. Maybe that's why you moved here. That's why a lot of people move here. I'm actually a native and I enjoy our water resources as much as possible. Underwater, on top of the water, next to the water. So we really want to look for ways to protect these. They're a great asset of ours. Florida receives about 54 inches of rain. That's an average across the state. That's a lot of rain. A lot of water comes onto our state, and we have to figure out, how to move it sometimes into places other than near our homes and town areas. We have 7,700 lakes, lots of mileage, our rivers and streams, and then 700 springs. We have more springs than any place in the world. So really, we have quite a jewel when it comes to water resources right here. This graphic is showing predicted growth here in Florida, and you can see, well, across the whole United States actually, but you can see in Florida that we're anticipating more growth. Of course, we always are anticipating more growth, but when we grow, we also have to worry about things like our water. It's more of a drain, of course, haha, pun intended, on our water resources as more people come into our state. So how are we going to manage that? You can see the colors of the states are representing how much water they use, gallons per day. And you can see Florida, we're kind of in the middle. We're not super ultra conservative, and we're not, the worst user. It looks like Nevada is the one that really needs some water conservation information. So this graphic is showing broken down into industry, who uses the most water. It includes public supply. Some of these numbers are a little old. They're about 10 years old. So in the lifeblood presentation, you're going to see a little bit more current information because this is showing public supply and agriculture to be very close to the same. Actually, agriculture showing a little more here. I don't believe that's true anymore. We've worked really hard with our producers, farmers, to reduce that use. And instead of using the flood type of irrigation, they are, at least in Florida, are using more overhead irrigation, which is actually saves a lot of water versus that field flooding. So same information, just broken down into a pie chart. So the mission of water management districts is really to help protect our water resources and then also ensure that we have a supply of water for the future. They kind of keep things balanced as we grow. You have to get consumptive use permits in order to pull water from the ground. So this, again, it's referencing the St. John River Water Management District. In this part of the state over here, the Tampa Bay area, we operate under the Southwest Florida Water Management District, but all the water management districts essentially have the same mission to protect our water resources and, to manage them, to make sure that as we grow, that no one entity is pulling all the water, that there's a balance, and that it can be a sustainable use. So I'm talking about the Florida Water Star program. This is a voluntary program. It's for new and existing residential and commercial developments. Now, we find it more with the new developments. We don't see a lot of existing developments, homes, commercial, that are being retrofitted. There's some things that you have to look at with the plumbing, which makes it a little challenging for the existing. structures, but it's very popular with the new structures. But it does encourage water efficiency in your household appliances and plumbing, and then of course in the landscape. So breaking this out a little bit, you can see the different water management districts down in this part. So we have the South Florida Water Management District, we have the Southwest Florida Water Management District, the St. John's, and then there are actually two other water management districts here, the Swanee and the Northwest water management districts are up here, but the Florida Green Building Coalition is who oversees the Florida Water Star program up in the Panhandle in this area. So, you know, this is the breakdown of our water management district is here. I think it incorporates 13, I want to say 13 counties. So different versions of the Florida Water Star program came out, you know, a little bit different timing. Residential was first, trying to really encourage folks to conserve in homes. And then about 6 years later, they launched the commercial and community. So now whole communities can be deemed Florida Water Star versus just individual homes. So the program incorporates both landscape plants, irrigation, and then indoor fixtures. And we'll talk more about that. So some of the landscape goals, you want to make sure that your plants are site appropriate. Reduction in irrigated turf grass. Now the reason that turf grass gets that kind of negative connotation is because of its maintenance needs. So turf, because it has a very small root system, you know, it only goes down you're fortunate if you have 8 inches of roots on turf, but typically it's more in the 5 to 6 inch area. That's part of the soil profile. So you have your soil profile. When things get irrigated or rainfall, you know, the moisture goes down, and then as the sun comes out, this part, the top part, dries out the fastest. So if your root systems are shallow, they're up in this top part, which dry out faster. So when we're talking about shrubs and ground covers, they tend to have deeper root systems so they can access moisture at a lower level, therefore not needing water as frequently or, you know, therefore as much water. So turf grass kind of gets that negative connotation because of its water needs. It's a high water user, and it can also you know, if it's not planted in the right place, or if it's stressed, it can have pest problems, you know, fungus and insects. So it can sometimes need more chemical application. So it kind of gets that negative name to it. So that's why they're recommending a reduction in turf grass areas. I'm not saying that turf grass is a bad guy, because there are some places that is totally appropriate. So don't get that, don't take that message away, because you know, there are places that turf grass is your best option. So again, site appropriate plants, that means that they're zoned appropriately. You're not going to plant South Florida plants in North Tampa because they're probably not going to work there. Wrong zones. You're going to make sure you're reducing turf grass, irrigated turf grass areas. You want to preserve as much existing vegetation as you can, and then shade trees and shaded areas are encouraged for energy and for, you know, evaporation and all of the water. It reduces evaporation. So evaluating your plant suitability, you're going to want to look at the soil type, the pH. pH is so important, and people neglect that a lot of times. I know you had a landscape module, and so hopefully that was covered in there, but a lot of people try to force plants. Ixora is one of them in our area. Ixora really likes about a 5.5 to 6 pH, and our typical pH in developed areas is more like 7.5 to 8.5. So it just really doesn't do well, although it's got red flowers, and it becomes very desirable because of its red flowers. And then it ends up needing a lot of care because it's not it's not in its right place. So that's what you're trying to do when you're looking for the right plant, is to find, the right place for the right plant, by matching those soil conditions to the plant's needs. That includes sunlight, that includes moisture, that includes the growth rate. How big is that plant going to be upon maturity? We forget to think about that sometimes when we put plants under small windows, windows that have a windowsill that's maybe 3 feet off the ground, and we put a big shrub in front of it that now has to be maintained or pruned all the time so that you can see out that window. And that's stressful to the plant. So, trying to find plants that are suited for the site. Right plant, right place is always what we're looking for. We want to make sure that our plant groupings are good, meaning that we don't have something like impatiens. Impatiens need a lot of water right next to some ornamental grasses that don't need or don't want a lot of water. Because then what happens is, in order to keep your impatiens happy on the irrigation cycle or zone, it's going to stress out the grasses that don't need as much water, so they're going to get fungus. And then the opposite, if you try to keep the ornamental grass happy by keeping it drier, then the impatiens are going to wither because they're not getting enough water. So you want to zone your plants appropriately based on their water needs, and shade and sun needs too. And something to think about, landscapes mature. Okay, landscapes grow and mature. And so let's look at this area right here and pretend this is a shade tree, because this is actually a palm tree right here. But let's pretend it's a shade tree. As it gets bigger, it's going to shade more area. So if you have some full sun plants here, over time, they're not going to do as well. So, you have to think about that. The landscape's evolving. The other thing that you have to think about with your evolving landscape is your irrigation, because your irrigation does not grow or change or move unless you do something to it. However, your plants are. So you always need to be maintaining that irrigation system for the evolution, growth of your landscape. There are some great resources that can help you in choosing the right plant for the right place. Not only does the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program have some wonderful resources that are available on their website for plant selection, but the water management districts also have some resources that can help you. So does the Florida Native Plant Society. So there are lots of resources out there for you to help you with this effort. And you can always talk to your local extension agent. We have lots of Master Gardener volunteers that love to talk about this. So please utilize your free resources at your extension services. So again, this is a website that you can type in some information about the plants, and then it will yield to you which types of, or the names of plants that will work. Or you can type in the name of the plant and it will tell you its site conditions. So it's a pretty cool little website. It yields the information. Once you put in the name, it will yield this type of information for you, so you can see the height, the mature height, and the mature width, which is really important. Hibiscus is the one that I typically use, although I don't really love it in the landscape. It tends to get a lot of pests. It, tends to need to be in the exact perfect area to do well. But hibiscus wants to be 15 feet tall and about 15 feet wide, 12 to 15 feet wide. So everybody puts these hibiscus like right up next to their homes or right in front of their doorways, and they don't realize how big it really wants to be. And the other issue with hibiscus is people want them for their beautiful flowers, and their beautiful flowers are on the terminal ends of their branches, which means, it's hard to show you here. Here's the branch. The terminal end, the very tip of the branch, is where your flower is. So if you put it in a place that you have to keep pruning it all the time, you're going to constantly be pruning off the flowers. You'll never get flowers, and that's why you put the plant there in the first place. So, these are things to consider: height and width of the plant you definitely want to consider before you put it in the ground, as well as the soil moisture and the sun and the pH. And resources like this will give you the information on the plant, and then you just need to know the information about the site that you're planning to put it in. So again, many of our extension offices offer soil testing, so you can find out your pH. So take advantage of that. So turf grass and shade, the right plant, right place. It's showing you that you can, that's a full sun on the left, full sun landscape there. And Bahia is what they chose to install because Bahia turf doesn't need as much irrigation. Actually, a common practice that is happening currently is that they're using Bahia in the backyards of developed homes. So in newer subdivisions, they'll put something like St. Augustine or zoysia in the front yard. And then in the backyard, they're putting Bahia because it doesn't need as much irrigation. And sometimes it can go without irrigation. So a lot of these new developments, in order to cut the amount of water that they need, and why are they doing that? To get their permit, because water resources are managed. And as more and more development happens, we have to cut back on the amount of water that we're using because we only get a permit for so much water, right? We only are allowed to pull so much water out of the ground. We only have so much reclaimed water that we can use. So they have to figure out ways to cut water as we develop and show that in order to get their permits. So this is a new common practice, is Bahia in the backyard, and that cuts the irrigation down. So in this case, they just use Bahia in the entire landscape, which well, when I say entire landscape, I mean in the entire turf landscape. But they also used a lot of plants. You can see there's a huge plant bed coming away from the house. It's not just a foundational planting, and so it cut the amount of turf grass required in the front yard. On the design on the right, they utilized the existing tree that was on site, and we know that turf doesn't grow in the shade. So where that shade is under that tree, they've used landscape beds because that turf grass is not going to grow in the shade. And also the shade from that tree is going to reduce that evapotranspiration, which is the moisture coming off of the plants due to the sun and the heat. All right, with irrigation goals as a part of this program, they want to make sure that leaks are reduced, so they try to put things in place to help with that. There are flexible pipes that can be used in areas where the pipes get jarred, like up next to the driveways. You can use flexible pipes. So, they look for things like that. They also look for pressure regulators and check valves. And the reason that they like check valves, and what the check valve is when the irrigation's turned off, water flows to the lowest point. So what will happen is when you turn off your irrigation system, all the water in the pipes will flow out to the lowest point of the system and drain out through that irrigation head. So then the next time you turn your irrigation system on, all those pipes have to fill up full of water again. Check valves stop that. Check valves are in place that when the system shut off, boom, they hold the water in the pipes. And so the next time the system comes on, that water is utilized first. So that's two reasons. Those are a good idea. One is because it's, saving that water. And then secondly, it is not as hard on your irrigation system because that, burst of water isn't coming through again. They call them water hammers sometimes when that water, comes through and boom, hits the pipes. So it can, reduce wear and tear on your system too. They're also looking for the actual applications, making sure that there's an even distribution or head-to-head coverage, nice application of water, and that the schedule is correct. You're following your water restrictions, that you're not watering at the inappropriate times or overwatering with number of days. So, I talked with you already about why we reduce turf areas if we can, and that is largely to reduce water. Um, so irrigated turf and non-turf areas need to be separated with the irrigation system because turf needs more water. So it needs to be on a different zone than your landscape beds because they don't need as much water, again, because their root systems go deeper and they can access moisture at a deeper level. So you want to make sure that you don't have the same zone irrigating turf and landscape beds. The other nice thing is landscape beds can use micro irrigation or low volume irrigation. Turf can't. So, well, it can, but it's super high maintenance if you want to do it. So you need to have them on separate zones because you can use the low volume then in your landscape beds, and turf is going to typically have the high volume. You want to make sure that and this program will help you with that because this is something that they check for before they will deem you Water Star. But you want to make sure that you have uniform applications so that you have full coverage. And you can see in the graphic here on the right, if you don't have uniform coverage, you get kind of these pockets that are you get a deeper level of moisture and then a not so deep level in other areas, which causes stress on the plants. In this case, it's turf. It can also cause actual ruts and low spots, depressions in your yard because you have this kind of softer area. And when the mowers go through or when you're walking on it, it tends to compact more than the drier areas. So it can, over time, kind of create these lower spots in your yard. So micro irrigation or low volume irrigation is definitely encouraged under this program. You do need filtration on these systems. You can see the little head here. It's really tiny little holes that the water's coming through, and any particulate, pieces of sand or whatever can clog that up. So the bottom picture is showing what we call an inline filter, and this is the filter. This is the valve that turns your irrigation zone on and off, and this is the filter. So this unscrews. There's a little screen in there that you can clean out, and just depending on your water source as to how often you clean that out. There's sometimes wells, or if it's coming from surface water like a stormwater pond or something, you may need to clean it out a little more frequently than you would from other sources. So filtration is definitely needed, and pressure regulation is definitely needed. Low volume irrigation doesn't take as much water, so it doesn't need as much pressure. Plus those little tiny little heads, you put too much pressure on them and you'll zing them right off. This little piece right here will come flying off of the tube, and then you just have a stream of water and it's not hitting your plants anymore. So you need to make sure that you have the appropriate pressure, and pressure regulators can help with that. I went out to a brand new property one time and turned on the irrigation system, and they neglected to put pressure regulation on the micro irrigation, and it was screaming. The whole system was like because of the pressure on all these heads. So you want to make sure that you're using appropriate pressure levels. All right. The Florida Water Star program encourages alternate sources of water. So this is showing a image of a cistern. I'm not going to lie, cisterns installed can be a little expensive, but you can do a small cistern in the form of a rain barrel or multiple rain barrels, or a smaller cistern. There's some reused tanks that hold like 250 gallons of water, but something like this system, the storage system, it gets to be quite expensive. They're wonderful, and I would highly encourage you to use them, but I thought that I would put one on my house and then got a little sticker shock from it. So but definitely, if you can, as you're constructing a home or a business, that would be something to consider to install. So basically what happens is the rainwater comes down, you have your catchment system, in this case it's gutters, and then it puts the water into the cistern. Then you can use this water for irrigation. Um, in commercial buildings, they can also use the water for toilet flushing, and our Sarasota County Extension Service has a gray water reuse system. So when you go to the bathroom, the toilet actually has a sign on it, do not drink this water, because it is a reuse water system. So some other indoor goals, or some indoor goals for water conservation under this program would be, again, reducing leaks, using fixtures and plumbing that is going to help prevent leaks. Efficient fixtures, using things like aerators on your faucets, your water supply, and then your hot water distribution. So a lot of times we waste water because we're waiting for our shower to heat up, or, you know, if you're shaving, your sink to heat up to get the warm water. So if you have your hot water source closer to your shower or to your sink, then not as much water has to pass through the pipe before you get the warm water. So um, that's something that they look at, is, you know, the proximity of the hot water. And there's some systems, I've forgotten the name of them now, but they're these instant hot water systems that you can have 2 or 3 of them in the home. They're, you know, located in your bathroom under the counter, or in your kitchen under the counter, and they help with that. They give you, you know, pretty much instant hot water. So there are requirements under the program with your sinks and with your faucets and shower heads. So the shower heads can't, they need to have a flow rate of 2 gallons a minute or less. And so, you know, that's becoming a standard nowadays. You're seeing more and more water conserving fixtures, because this is, you know, it's a national issue. It's not just a Florida issue. So they don't really encourage any of those multi-heads, or actually it's discouraged the multi-head type showers, or like the rain. I know it was very popular, the rain shower head, but handheld, um, the handheld fixture is allowed. So even if you have, you know, the type of fixture that's in the top picture here, you can still have a handheld. It is an ADA requirement for some homes. So the faucets at your sinks need to have a lower flow rate. It can only be 1.5 gallons per minute. And again, you know, aeration can even help further with that. Of course, toilets, these are kind of like the super high efficiency toilets at 1.3, let's say, gallons per flush. That's a really low level of water per flush. And so they have the even higher efficiency that has, there's 2 buttons here. So there's one button for urine and the other button for feces. So if you use the appropriate button, it takes a little more water, or uses a little more water when you flush it on the number 2 flush instead of the number 1 flush. Your appliances, of course, your dishwasher and your washer, not dryer, but your washer, can use a lot of water. Washers, I was surprised when I did some research on washers. The top loading type of washer can use up to 50 gallons of water per cycle. That's crazy. So they're wanting, you know, it pretty much makes you have that front loading type of washer, because I don't think those top loaders can be as efficient. So those front loading washers, they're looking for 6 gallons or less of water used per cycle. And dishwashers, again, they can use a lot of water. So they're looking for dishwashers that use, you know, 5.8 gallons or less per cycle. So we actually got a dishwasher that uses steam as a part of its cleaning method, which really saves on the water. And I think I think it's rated at like 4 gallons per use. So there are, and I know washing machines are doing the same thing. They're starting to utilize steam in the wash process so that it saves on water. They also want you to use armor hoses. They have the metal kind of wrapped around them for the washer and dishwasher. Um, okay, this is what I was talking about with the hot water delivery. So having the hot water heater at a far distance from where you need it, let's say the water heater's here and you need the hot water here or over here, it travels a long way to get there. So they like the point of use hot water or those instant hot water type of systems. So this is a recent, well, it's not recent now, but it's a project that was done in Orlando. And they've worked a lot with Habitat for Humanity to get the homes that are built with Habitat to be WaterStar certified. And so this particular development has 58 townhomes. They used the ET controllers, which are based on the weather. So this controller actually looks at the weather and determines whether the irrigation system should run or not based on what the weather conditions have been. They used Bahia turf when they needed to use turf and micro irrigation. Most of the homes in this project met the gold certification. So we're going to talk about the different levels here towards the end, I believe. Here's another one that received a gold certification. Again, you can see in this photo here that there's not a lot of turf. They use native species. This one is cool because it's doing the rainfall harvesting. So, they're using that cistern to reuse the water in the landscape when they can. They also have solar panels. So this particular house is off the grid. All right, so there's a lot of places that are using rebates and incentives, some mandates to get this program out there. So just depends on where you live, if there's incentives in place to, builders and developers are taking advantage of these incentives. So, look for Florida WaterStar in your area and you can see what incentives are available in your area. So the Florida WaterStar program has a accredited professional program. That's what it's called, accredited professional program, which means that folks go through some training, they take a test, and if they pass, then they can be an accredited professional or an AP. Not just the South or St. John's Water Management District partnered with FNGLA, all of the water management districts now have partnered with the Florida Nursery Grower and Landscape Association, FNGLA, on this Florida WaterStar Professional Development Program. So this program, in order to install the landscape for a Florida WaterStar home, the landscape professional has to be an accredited professional. That's just to ensure that they're going to do the right things. And here's why. The Florida WaterStar approval process is done by a third party. So you have folks that are more concentrated on the development, the indoor stuff that are certifying. They don't necessarily know what native plants are. They wouldn't recognize an invasive plant from a native plant and don't understand uniform coverage on irrigation systems and things like that. It's hard to know everything about indoor water conservation and everything about outdoor water conservation. So what they've decided to do is train landscape professionals so that they are installing the proper material, and the person certifying the home then can lean on the landscape professional's knowledge and not have to know as much about that area. So you can go on the website and look up, who are the accredited professionals under the Florida Water Star program. There is the technical manual that is available. So if you want to learn all the details about how to get points to become a Florida Water Star home, then you can go into this website and look up the technical manual and see all the details about, the indoor, the outdoor water conservation features and the points that you would receive for those. I will say that this technical manual, during COVID, we had many meetings on this, and it is being improved. So you might see a new version in the very, very near future coming out. You'll also see, oops, I didn't mean to do that, that there are different levels off to the right. You can see there's the bronze and the silver, and then there's actually a gold level. They are doing away with the bronze level. It will just be silver and gold, and they may even have a new name soon. So indoor criteria, if you go to the technical manual, you can click on the topics and find detailed information as to how it can qualify you. And you can see here they're already knocking the bronze off. So it's just silver and gold that's being referenced. Okay, so if you have any questions about this program, Deidre Irwin is who developed the program. She is in the St. John River Water Management District area. We have a representative in our area in the Southwest Florida Water Management District, which I will list in the program, kind of resource area. Her name is Robin Grantham, and I'll put her contact information in the program resource area for you if you'd like to give her a call, especially if you're working on a new home, new development, want to work with your builder developer. She's more than happy to talk with them about projects. So thank you very much. Again, I'm Michelle Atkinson, and you'll find my contact information as well in that resource area. So feel free, if you have any questions, to contact either myself or Robin. Thank you.